Hi, everybody. Sorry I'm late to my own lives. That's pretty much happens every single time. We're just going to wait here for a minute until Amanda can join us. So Amanda from the Resume RX is going to join us and give us all of her knowledge about how to avoid burnout as an NP. I'm already choking on my spit. All right, let's see. Oh, time. I'm not. No one is shocked. Hi, everybody. Let me see. We're having quite a day here. So, hi, Amanda.
Hey.
How are you?
So, good. So I figured we could actually just do a curly hair tutorial instead.
Okay, good. Perfect. Good. This is my, I got halfway through it last night and I put the leave-in conditioner and the curling cream. And then I was like, know what? No, I'm going to bed. So I was like, it's fine. But curly hair is very forgiving, I feel like. Just put a little bit of water in there and you're like, hey, it's fine. Everything's fine. Do you do the curly girl method?
For you, but
oh, well, thank you. I didn't return that favor, but
you're welcome.
It's fine.
I know. I slept on my hair too last night and it was just not good. So
no, I never do. I usually now that mess. Does yours hold on to moisture for forever?
Yeah, it's still wet. I braided it last night and I woke up and it was still wet.
Your pillow's like a swamp. I know that life. You're like, I know, right? It's not what I want. All right, good. Hi, everybody who's here. Okay, so did you have something you wanted to share? Do you just want to discuss general NP? The main topic here is going to be NP burnout, how to prevent it, and just kind of some tips that you have realized along the way that we can implement that would alleviate it before it starts becoming rampant. Because I think we had both talked about in your nursing job, there's just a lot more other people who are in the same boat with you, and that kind of helps you along the way. And it's just not quite that way, just due to the nature of your NP role. There's not as many, you're in an office with a couple other people who kind of identify with you, and then everyone else is just different. You kind of don't fit in necessarily like you did.
Yeah, totally. I agree. It's different. The role is different. And we talk about this a lot. And we want you to, if you're an NP student or a newer NP, we don't say any of this to scare you. We want you to be prepared and have realistic expectations when you get to the point where you're feeling uncomfortable about, your work boundaries, or you feel like maybe this whole career isn't what you thought it would be. I want you, and we want you to have the tools to really feel like you can overcome that and you can be in control a little bit more than you think. Because, I teach a lot about how to find your dream NP job. And that's a huge part of it, right? There's a whole job search strategy piece of this puzzle. But at the same point, there's a next step to maintaining your happiness and really living out a fulfilling career. Even if you're in a job you love, it doesn't mean that you're exempt from feeling burnt out or from blurring your boundaries at work, that type of thing. Yeah. So, I think I'm happy to field some questions if anyone's watching. I think is there a question box that shows up on your,
let me see if I
on your thing, in case anyone.
Does it let me add it after the fact? I don't think so. And I forgot to put one up and I was like, oops.
No, we can.
Can I add?
We can keep an eye on the comments too.
Yeah, if I see anything, I'll let you know. That was on my to-do list. And then our day we aren't sleeping. The girls are still in the same room and it's just a complete disaster.
Oh my gosh.
Someone needs sleep. So if you guys
confession.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to say that my confession is that I schedule these at 8 p.m. so that I don't have to do bedtime. That's a really don't tell my idea. Husband he's not watching because he's putting our kids to bed.
Yeah, but that's a really
someone
good
said
idea.
In the comments there's a question box on their screen.
Oh, perfect.
So maybe if someone wants to it'll pop up on your end.
Oh yeah. Okay, good.
Oh
yeah, Hannah did a testing thing. Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Cool.
I'm glad you figured that out for me. I don't even know. Okay, good. Perfect. Thank you, Rosie, too, for saying that.
And I'll preface, we can preface the conversation by also saying that this is kind of a preamble or a precursor to a masterclass that I'm teaching on Sunday that is totally free, where I'm going to really be teaching a framework to help avoid burnout and to really like love your career. So Liz, I'm sure that you have been posting that link. Thank you. And you can probably get it with this video when we're done. Because, you know, I really think that it's a multi-tutorial thing. Like there are things to focus on in your clinical preparation so that you're staying clinically savvy. There's like a self-care element to things of what you need to be doing for yourself outside of work. And then there's also, you know, how you connect with other people and your support structure and who you get mentorship from. And all of that together is kind of like this formula that I think if you pay attention to these things, then it's kind of like you're armoring yourself against burnout as best as you possibly can, right? Because we only really have control over ourselves. But sometimes, hopefully, that will be enough. If you're in a supportive job and you focus on these things, then, you know, that's really hopefully enough. And there's a question in the comment. Will the event be helpful for NP students? Absolutely. This is geared towards NP students and nurse practitioners, really regardless of your level of experience, because, you know, I've been an NP for 10 years and like, this is still something that I struggle with, that my classmates struggle with, whether, you know, the problems evolve as time goes on. And, you know, when you're a student, you're like worrying about transitioning to your new role. And when you're in your first couple years, you're worrying about feeling burnt out. And then as time goes on, you start to feel more of kind of disconnection and sometimes isolation that can come with NP practice. And you're looking for ways to really rejuvenate yourself professionally. So I really think that there are tools here for all sorts of, all levels of experience.
Yeah. And going into it, I think as a student would almost be even better, because then you would have it before you go into it. You know what I mean? Like, and then you're already like, that's in the back of your mind. You can know that can like influence how you're interviewing and like what you're looking for in a job, versus if you're already in it and you're like, oh, like, this is kind of rough, then you're going backwards. So I think as a student, it would be totally fine. Let me see.
Yeah.
And then,
yeah, definitely.
Hopefully there's audio. Nick for Life said there's no audio. I can hear you, so hopefully other people can
I can hear
us.
you too.
Yvette said advice for multilingual providers. Do you mean like on a resume or just in general? Because the world needs you. So my advice would be clone yourself.
Make sure everybody knows.
Yeah, make sure just like everywhere. You can write it everywhere. Haley Molly said, would you recommend going from an ADN straight to an MSN? Let me see. So, I mean, I think it just matters.
I think it depends on
your situation, kind of. No, I was just going to say, I think it depends on like your situation. You know, if you know exactly what you want to do and you've had like some experience, you know, like I think it's fine to go right ahead. I personally don't think your BSN provides you with an astounding benefit, but I might be in the minority there.
Yeah, I think that
in your MSN
most programs
anyway.
You'll have to get it.
Yeah,
totally.
It'll like string it along with it.
A bridge experience.
Yeah,
right.
So I don't think
but
if
if you've had experience, and if you experience as a nurse, as an ADN, and you are pretty clear that NP is your end goal, go for it.
Yeah, or whatever like your MSN kind of is, you know, because you're gonna have to repeat. I feel like those BSN classes in your nursing program for your BSN are going to be, they'll include them, one, in the program, but two, like they're going to be repeated in your master's, like at just a more advanced level. Like you're going to do research again, you're going to take theory, you're going to take all of those like, you know, fluff classes again, just at a higher level. So you're not going to like miss anything. You know what I mean? Like you're not going to miss anything. I'm obviously a huge lover of the BSN, in case Can't. Oh, I feel like there's so much more opportunity we could do with it, but it's fine. Um, Let me see. Future RN Charlene said I'm about to take my NCLEX and I'm nervous about it. I've been doing a lot of practice questions, but my anxiety is through the roof. That's totally normal. Totally normal. You'll be okay.
Yeah, it's definitely normal. You will pass. Tell yourself multiple times a day, I will pass. I will pass. Like, do these affirmations, right? And do what you need to get your anxiety under control. Because if you've been doing practice questions, and like anxiety or panic can get in your way. So if you need to like not do anything the day before or go for a massage or whatever you can do to manage your anxiety, that's going to be the best thing to benefit you as you get really close to your test day, because you likely know your material and you are prepared. You just need to make sure that you are in like a positive mindset and a good mental space when you take the test.
Yeah, for sure. Like sleep. Just sleep. Like do not stay up and then like cram. You know what I mean? Just like sleep and then go into it, get there early, and just so much of NCLEX too is like about the question itself. You know what I mean? Not even that you can kind of parse out a lot of the content. So being well rested and like not in a panic mode will be so helpful.
Totally.
And then Amanda, we can keep doing questions. I didn't know if you wanted to, like, if you had any other agenda. I probably should have touched base with you before. You might have tried, but
no, I didn't.
Just here along.
Yeah. No, I just figured we could.
Perfect.
We could just go with the flow. So
that sounds good.
Cool with
the
that.
type of human I am. You know this. Let me see. Every time I was like, do you want to do something structured? I'm like, no, I really don't. The nurse guide said, I'm about to start my program in September. How do you balance keeping up with social posts for nurse life outside, social posts for nurses life outside and your work? You work very part-time. That's how I do it.
Yeah. So right now I'm not working clinically. So this business is my full-time job at the moment. I was kind of forced out of clinical practice because of the pandemic. It's a sabbatical, not a permanent thing. So for me, like I'm full-time mom and part-time, full-time business owner. I've never worked full-time while being a mom and also having a business. And there are very few people who can pull that off. We only have so many hours in a day and so much energy. So it usually ends up being a decision to kind of split your energy where you want to.
Yeah. And so I would recommend, if you want to keep up with the social side, you have to figure out a way to monetize it, because it has to be able to bring in some income for you so that you can work part-time. Because it's just not, you can do like I did the bedtime nap time thing, and that's what I've done for 3.5 years. And I am like so done, like so burnt out. I'm getting, actually tomorrow's hopefully a babysitter is coming to my house. I don't really know. We were supposed to have one and they backed out today, and then I contacted a different one. She might show up tomorrow, but like I'm starting to now like have someone to watch the girls, because the bedtime nap time thing, if you have kids, it's just so exhausting. But definitely figure out a way to monetize something. If people don't do the whole, like, people are sending you stuff, like, no, if they're going to be using your platform, like, they're going to be paying you, and they will. So know that you're worth a whole lot. So, Sandra said, do you regret taking the FNP track as opposed to other specialties? No, I don't like inpatient anything. And I like my humans awake. So that pretty much limited that. Do you like what you went into, Amanda? Let's
see. Yeah, actually, so I studied adult NP before it was adult gero, because I'm that old, and women's health. So I did a dual specialty, and I'm glad that I did, because there weren't really any women's health jobs where I lived when I graduated. So But my work has been mostly in emergency medicine, and I'm limited because I'm not an FNP. So I can't see kids.
Hmm.
And so that's probably my only regret. And the only thing that I've considered doing after the fact would be like a postmaster's FNP so that I could work in an ER that
Hmm.
sees pediatric patients and not have to deal with that. Like in some places, I've just been like, I can't see kids. And as long as I'm not
Yeah.
there by myself, it's not a big deal.
Hmm.
But I do like hospital. I do like inpatient. Fortunately, the emergency department is a good specialty where you don't have to be acute care certified depending on your state.
Yeah, I know I feel like the ER is such a weird in between. Like people ask me all the time, they're like, should I get my acute or my adult or my FNP? I'm like, it is so like, I know some places make you have your peds and your adult, and then some places are fine with your FNP. Some
Yeah.
places want you to be dual adult Jera, like FNP acute care. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what have you found with that most places
Yeah,
want?
it's confusing. Yeah, so most places that I've worked want FNPs.
Okay.
And the reason is like the majority of emergency care is not super, super high acuity.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
usually end staffing, like the critical care bay and not running
Hmm.
codes unless you're in a critical access hospital. So for the most part, like if you think ER is in your future, FNP is a great thing to do. Um, and you can potentially, there are some programs where you can do a combined FNP and acute care.
Hmm.
So that's a good dual certification for ER. But there's also an ENP certification, which is there's no education really at this point. It's
Hmm.
kind of like a practice certification,
Oh,
and you
okay.
have to get that.
Oh,
So I
interesting.
can't,
I
even
didn't know
though I
that.
have 6 years of ER
Yeah.
experience, I
Yeah.
can't apply for that because I don't have the right certification.
That's annoying. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever.
You're like, it's fine. It's everything's fine. Danny said, burnout's very real. We've chosen to move to travel nursing so we can take breaks between contracts. I think, yeah, I think burnout, I think like we've said, there's things that you can do to like lessen how much it is, and like how quickly it sets in. But I do think at some point, like, I mean, in literally any career, I think everyone's going to hit a point where they're like, I'm over it. Like, because I think that's normal. But then knowing how to get out of it and how to look at the big picture of like, okay, this is like normal. And like, there are things I can do to make it less like dire. Like, I'm going to quit my job over this if you don't want to quit your job. But travel nursing is definitely, or any kind of like per diem thing, like when you can leave for a little bit, that's the way to go. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, I think about burnout like similar to the prevention framework, like there's
Hmm.
primary, secondary, and tertiary prevention. And primary
Yeah.
prevention is like, how can we actually do things in advance to prevent this from happening? So that's like
Oh, that's a good way to think about it.
choosing
Yeah.
the right job, like
Hmm.
tuning into red flags, like deciding what type of area you want to work in and lining things up ahead of time. And then
Hmm.
secondary is like recognizing the problem and then remedying it basically. So that's like, okay, I'm starting to feel burnout. What can I do to make sure that it doesn't get worse, or potentially avoid it altogether? And then tertiary prevention is like, all right, we're doing damage control. And that's usually when you're like leaving jobs or changing careers altogether,
Hmm.
or, really affect. So I think there are kind of all different ways to determine what you need to do and how you need to act based on like where you fall on that spectrum.
Hmm. Yeah. And a huge part of it is boundaries, I've found now. Cause
For
then as soon as I see myself falling into like category two where I'm like, I'm just like, nope, like, okay, we are doing no, like just what we need to do. And then really leaning into the word no. Like, no, I cannot do that for you. Um, how difficult is it to find a part-time job as an NP? Is it worth the schooling and money only to do it part-time? I think that depends on like, you know, your situation and I knew going into it, I only ever wanted to work part-time. So for me, I more went into it not to make more money, but just because like this is then what I wanted to do. Like I was like, oh, like this is the direction that I didn't know going to nursing school that I would go to NP school. It was more like as I worked as a nurse, I saw like, actually, I want to do this, and this is what I need to get in order to do it. So it wasn't like that's not what kind of got me there. But so I don't really know if it would monetarily be worth like if you're just looking at it from a money standpoint. I don't know if like the mental stress of being an NP, because it's a lot more stressful, at least for me, would be worth it. Like I would probably just, because you can make a lot of money as a nurse. So if you're more looking for something that you can make a lot of money, like work part like per diem or anything like that, and just work your way on up there, because that's probably going to make you more money.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And, the other thing too is like you said, deciding the reasons why you want to become an NP that's super important. If you are in school or already an NP and looking into part-time, it really depends on, your financial situation. Personally, I waited until I always had intentions of working full-time. Before I became a parent, I was like, I'm going to be a career woman, like no kid's going to stop me. And then, I got pregnant with twins. I had those twins and my life was just turned upside down. So I basically scurried to pay off my student loans. And that was my reward. I said, okay, if I can get to work, pay off these student loans, once I pay them off, then I will reward myself by going down to part-time, because all that money was just going to the loans anyway. Like I got used to living on less because my loan payments were thousands of dollars per month. So then I cut my hours back to 20 hours a week, which in the hospital, working 12-hour shifts came out to like 6 or 7 shifts a month. And I was working overnights, which it's a whole other story. But yeah, like from a work-life standpoint, working part-time as a parent was great. And I was in a financial situation where like it was a comfortable amount of money. And yeah, it would have been great to have more money, but the time was more valuable to me at that point.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you can, it matters too. Like, do you have to take out loans, I think, for your whole degree, or did your job like pay for part of them? If you have a ton of student loans, then no, it might not be feasible to work, like Amanda said, like part-time. My job as a nurse paid for half of my degree, so that made it. And then we just like, I'm married, and so we just really bought a house that was like, way cheaper than like just lived way below our means, so we paid for it out of pocket, so I didn't have to worry about that after. But that's from a very fortunate, like situation of not that many people get that situation, you know what I mean? So like, yeah, it just kind of depends on what you need to do. Nicole, oh, thanks, Nicole. She likes us. We like you too.
Okay, we like you too.
Let me see. Elena said, I miss my RN coworkers. Being an NP is lonely. I kind of agree. It can be quite lonely, depending on, especially if you're in a smaller practice. I found that at mine, it was pretty, until I really got to know the MAs. But even then, it can still be slightly uncomfortable because you still have to delegate to them. And so it can kind of be odd to be like, I need you to stop chatting with me and like go do I know you have a full inbox. I know you do. Like, you're like, oh, I like you, but let's see. Is it okay to start
and
working?
The thing is about being,
no, go for it.
I was going to say about being lonely, like it can be absolutely lonely. And once you recognize that, like what can you do about it? Like, you know that you're feeling lonely, or you're feeling isolated, or you don't have a lot of NP friends at work. So, the question is, what is in your control that you can do? Where can you find friends who understand? Like, can you reconnect with your classmates? Are there other ways that you can meet other NPs and, be in community and kind of like make up for that support that you're not getting in the workplace? And, that's part of this whole kind of connection arm of avoiding burnout is like, okay, if you can't connect and commiserate with people in your workplace, then how can you go out and make
Mm-hmm.
that easier by finding your people?
Yeah. And that makes it so much better. So much better. And not just for like
Yeah,
commiserating bad things, but like, you know, sharing good things, being like, hey, I finally got this. Whereas when you go home
totally.
and tell us, like, if you tell your spouse, like, oh my gosh, like I, you know, finally did an IND that looked like it was great, they're going to be like, nice, honey. But like, you know, like one of your NP friends is going to be like, that's awesome. Like, it's just going to be a different level of share your
Totally.
wins and your, and like, you like if they find something, you know, you can just be like, oh, I found this, like this was helpful, this might be helpful for you. Like people are just wonderful. um Nick said, is it okay to start in room after graduating FNP? I feel kind of bad. They like the rotation, graduate in May. The doctor is willing to let me be off 1 day a week so I can keep being a clinical instructor. Go for it. You know, if you ever want to go back to family med, like that's going to be an adjustment, but that's a later you problem. If you like rheumatology background is never going to hurt you in primary care. And you can pick up that information again, like, you know, do whatever you need to do at that point. But I would say that's fine. What do you think, Amanda?
Yeah, I co-sign that 100%.
Yeah.
Like, so I get this question a lot, like, is it okay to start off in a specialty? And it depends on the specialty and it depends on your interests. Like, if you know 100% that you are interested in foot and ankle surgery, then
Yeah.
by all means go into foot and ankle surgery, right? But if you're like, oh, there's this job, I'm not really sure, but it's a job, that's going to be a really hard specialty to then pivot back into
Mm-hmm.
primary care or whatever you were prepared for in your schooling. But like something that's a more broad specialty that primary care is referring to all the time,
Mm-hmm.
or consulting with all the time, then and you like it, then by all means go ahead, and yes, a future you problem will be pivoting into primary care if it gets to that point.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't hold you back from like current you success
No.
because of
Yeah.
future you worries, because then you're not going to take the chances that will ultimately lead to you being successful. And definitely it sounds like Nick is already doing clinicals here, which I think is a huge benefit, because that was going to be my next thing, is like make sure you're shadowing and you know what it's like and you know
Mm-hmm.
what the day-to-day looks like in a specialty, um, if you're interviewing for something where you haven't had a clinical rotation. But Nick, if you are there and you're doing your rotation there and you can see yourself working there and it seems like a supportive environment, then you have our blessing
Yeah.
to
Especially
take the
rheumatology.
position if you
Like
want.
you will
Yeah,
always have a job if you are trained in rheumatology. Like there's,
100%.
yeah, no one is in rheumatology. So I would, yeah, you'll be fine. That would be a huge selling point anywhere else you went, ever. They'd be like,
Yes.
oh, you know what? I can draw. What does this lab mean? Sandra said, why are FNPs paid so much less than psych NPs? Starting pay as a, well, you shouldn't have asked this question. I have a lot of feelings. Starting pay as a psych NP in Massachusetts is 150 and FNP is 80. Do you want to go for it, Amanda?
I'm kind of curious as to your feelings.
Oh, so in our healthcare system, um, if you, so let's just do like a base, my normal visit. So it's all just about reimbursement. So primary care, it depends on your state. So in North Carolina, I'll just talk about that because that's the billing system my background is in. So if you came to me and you were going to have even like a moderately complex, you have hypertension, type 2 diabetes, high cholesterol, and you're just coming in for like a regular med check, and you kind of have allergies or something that are bugging you this time. I would bill it as a 99214 and it would be $97. That encounter probably took me like half an hour realistically to like document, review all the previous labs and charting off on if we're having a good day. If a psychiatrist or a psychiatric mental health NP got paid, if they coded a minimum, so like the same general type of visit, we're doing a basic med check, maybe one small problem, their reimbursement is $325. So that is why, because if I can fit in even two or three appointments an hour, I've brought in close to $200, and they have brought in, and we all know most psych NPs see at least 4 an hour if we're being generous. So then they've brought in 325 times 4, maybe 5, and that's why they make more money. So that's every specialty. Ortho, everything. It's every kind of specialist gets paid way more to spend with people. And that's why no one does primary care. Because we get paid the absolute least and we have to do all the paperwork, all of the just everything, and you don't get reimbursed for any of that. So that's why I have feelings.
Yes. I know. I knew that you would have the numbers to support that. So
yeah,
which is not something I'm familiar with.
Yeah. And then everyone ends up in the ER for, and then you end up in the ER for all these. It's just a whole thing. But yeah, that's why, because our healthcare system does not value primary care at all. It likes to go to the end. Maddie said, when you started your first job, oh, did you have anything to say about that other than my passionate rant?
No, I was just going to say, like, is part of it is supply and demand, but mostly it is reimbursement, because you have to remember that nurse practitioners are revenue generating providers, meaning that the activities that we do make money for the practice, and visits are billed and coded and reimbursed a certain amount by the insurance companies, and you can formula to show how much money a nurse practitioner has generated based on the types of visits they've seen and the collection of the reimbursement payment, which isn't always exactly what is billed for. So providers who are able to bill and collect a higher fee for their services will demand a higher salary because they are making more money for the practice. And that's part of why there are some salary structures, even in primary care, that will take into account your productivity, meaning that if you see more patients, you make money. Because that is how NP salaries are calculated. It's based on the revenue that you bring into the practice.
Yeah. And you get more money too for like any kind of, so you can then, when you're billing, specialists make even more money too, because you get way more money from insurance companies whenever you do procedures or do questionnaires. So like for psych, you can charge usually about $40 to $50 to just do a PHQ-9 and a GAD-7 for anxiety and depression. It goes way up when you start coding for any other kind of psychiatric evaluation. Those numbers skyrocket on top of the cost of the appointment, which was already $325. So like primary care, we're maxing out like $150, and a psych appointment can easily get up to $500 for a 15-minute appointment where you filled out the questionnaire online. So same with like anything surgical. Like, I mean, you can just climb right up the scale, because anytime you stab someone, they pay you. Let me see. Maddie said, when you started your first job as an FNP, were you expected to take a full patient load from day one? I didn't have orientation, if that is what you mean, but I did have a reduced, like the first 3 days I saw like 1 person an hour. And then after that I went up to 2, and then I kind of tacked on all the other things that I do now. And now I'm like 2 to 3. And then but mine's weird because I do then like all the weird, like I do most of the paperwork for the office too. So that takes up a good chunk of time, but you should be ramped up. And that's something I think that could be with the burnout thing, is if you show up and they're like, oh, like, here you go, like, you're going to hate your job because they're setting you up to fail. Like, that's not cool.
Yeah, and that's a question that you can ask in an interview, either the first or the second interview. You can ask, what are the productivity expectations of this role? You can ask what orientation will look like. You can ask, will I have a ramped up schedule when I'm starting? Because yeah, I agree with Liz. And in the outpatient setting, that is a really great benchmark of like 1 patient an hour, because that's pretty doable, especially when you have someone who's mentoring or orienting you. Like that's enough time to see and evaluate a patient and to potentially present to someone who's supervising you if you need some support. And then, you know, some places will have that already outlined, or some places might say, you know, yes, we will start you at one patient an hour and ramp you up based on your comfort. And those are really good signs of practices that are willing to work with you, as opposed to a practice that said, well, within the first week, we expect you to be seeing 24 patients a day. That is a practice that really values high volume over satisfaction providers.
Yeah, and that's not great. You probably don't want to be there. That's not going to be a good time. We will save this live stream, Sandra. I will tell Avery when we're speaking. She's not speaking to me right now. I'm sure she'll get over it. Jenna. Oh, Jenna, if you have any advice on any of this too, you probably know way more than I do. Jenna's a great human to follow. If you don't follow her, my
Yes.
NP Jenna, go do that.
We love Jenna.
I feel like we're going to talk about you for a second, Jenna. Everything, like every time I log on, she's doing some other random like life skill that I'm like, oh, of course you like are a master gardener. And of course you do this. And then I messaged her about something. She's like, oh yeah, I'm just like cultivating something. I'm like, of course you are. Like,
I told her that
not?
I just follow for the chickens.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I was like, oh yeah, you have chicken, like everything. Perfect. So you're basically, yes, life goals. Um, let me see. I'll have my first practicum in May and I'm a bit stressed. Any tips for success? You know, you'll be okay. It's much more nerve-wracking before I just fell off my bike watching you. Caution.
Oh no, Jen.
Oh, that's not good. Oh, that's my nightmare. I feel like my knees will explode. Going in, and I think communicating with your preceptor is the biggest thing. This is what I know. This is what I don't know. This is what I'd like to learn. And then just frequently checking in and like being really honest and being like, please, like, you know, give me some like feedback. But I found that I think it works the best if you go in and you're like, this is what I'd like to focus on, and kind of lay it out for the semester. You know, by the end of the semester, I would like to be able to see whatever, write 2 notes in a day and see 6 patients. Like, great, let's ramp you up and get you there. And letting people know what you know, what you're comfortable with, or like what you need to see is going to be the biggest thing, so that we can actually like help you, I think, is probably the biggest thing. And then understanding that any sane person, like, you're not going to know, and we know that. And like, it's not, you know, it's okay to just kind of spitball your best, be like, hey, I'm not totally sure, but like, this is kind of my line of thinking. And then if it's right, it's right. And if it's not, then it's just, you're like, oh, okay. Like, you're a student, you're not supposed to know everything. And I feel like, at least this is how, when I was a student, I felt like I needed to know everything. And my preceptors were like, no, like it would be weird if you knew everything already. Like, that would be weird. So just give yourself a little bit of like grace and know that it's okay that you don't know anything. Like, this is your time to not know everything. If you've been doing this for 6 years and you still don't know anything, that's also weird. That's not good. But when you're a student, it's totally fine.
Yeah, agree. And I think like make sure you're spending time doing like in the room without your preceptor. That may not be like where you start, but like if it's your very first practicum and you're like in the fly on the wall stage, like even if it's not in your comfort zone, like remember to set a goal with your preceptor to say, okay, after a week or after this many sessions, I'd like to be able to go in and do the history and physical exam by myself and present to you. Like that's what I think should be the standard, because you need to have the opportunity to like not just observe and be like, yeah, I would do it that way, but to actually be in there and like think through, you know, your history taking acronym and your physical assessment. You know, you need to be able to practice that without someone watching you and without like feeling funny about it. So I think that's definitely a great goal for your very first practicum, but like definitely communicate with your preceptor, let them know what your goals are and ask for feedback, at the end of
Mm-hmm.
a week or at the end of your day, like thank them for their time. Do you have any feedback for my performance today? Anything that you think I should brush up on before next time? Like that's just a great way to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Just be teachable, like most people,
Totally.
any kind of, we're not trying to like hurt your feelings. And something you could even ask that I had a student last semester ask, and I had never had one ask me this before. And I was like, that's so smart. She asked, we looked at the day ahead and she was like, what are like two things that tonight I could go and read about more that will prepare me better for like some patients that I might see tomorrow? And I was like, oh, like, she's like, I'm not going to spend forever on it, but just like, oh, we have someone coming in and they're coming in for a PAP. Like, okay, so let's like just really nail down on that. And then someone else is coming in for headaches. Like, go and review some, if you can look ahead a little bit and make sure. I would ask the preceptor too, like in case they don't already, pair you with people that like they know their patients, so they know who's a good fit. And then if you if you notice that you're just getting stuck with like the person the preceptor doesn't want to deal with, try to say that in a nice way too, because I have had a lot of people that I've precepted who they're like, all I get stuck with is the people who just like chat for an hour. I'm like, yeah, that's mean. Not that I've definitely never done, I've done that before, but I warned them. I was like, I'm so sorry. Like, good luck in there. I'll come save you eventually. Oh, Joyful Aisha said, I'm wondering if I should go for a psych mental health NP afterwards. Depends on where you want to work. Like, are you going to be reinforced? Are you going to be reimbursed for that? Like, can you bill with that? You know what I mean? Like some offices you can't bill as a psych NP, especially like if you're in a state, where you need a collaborating physician and there's no one there who is a psychiatrist, then you can't be a psych NP at that office. You know what I mean? So like at that point you might be incurring more debt. Yes, you would have the knowledge, but like then it becomes a weird issue with like your scope of practice with that you have, if that makes sense. So like if you want to work in a capacity where you can like work with all your knowledge from your psych NP degree, then for sure, like that would make a really well-rounded human, because you see so much psych and family medicine. But like I know I wouldn't be able to, even if I got my psych NP, I wouldn't be able to use it at my current job because my collaborating physician is a family medicine doctor. So she is not a psychiatrist, which I think you would need to oversee your practice in psych. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think that if you are an FNP and you want to go back for psych, you certainly can, but plan to have a job change. So
Mm-hmm.
plan to, if you want to fully utilize that psych certification and, make the money that is to be made in psychiatry, then you will very
Mm-hmm.
likely be moving to a different type of job, different setting in more of a, purely psych setting, as opposed to, oh, this will help
Mm-hmm.
me in primary care, because you're not going to likely make enough money to make up for the expense. Like it's not going to feel worth your time for the reason that Liz said. Like even if you're a psych NP, you're still going to have your primary care salary, most likely. So plenty of people do it. Just prepare that it's going to be like a total job pivot after you get that certification.
Mm-hmm. And it might be weird. I've heard of some people running into issue where, so when you go for like the psych thing, like say you wanted to work up like schizophrenia or like bipolar, something like that, when you have to like think, if you work in primary care, when are you going to actually do that? Because you can't bill as a specialist. You cannot bill as a psych, because if you're going to a primary care, like there, you just can't bill as a specialty office, because that's not how you're licensed through them. So like when if you have 15-minute appointment times, because you're going to be reimbursed at a primary care level, is your employer even going to, it takes a long time to do those evaluations. So like, how are you going to like fit it in? Just those things to like think about. It sounds wonderful on pay, you know what I mean? It sounds so wonderful. You're like, oh, I'm going to get it. And then like, but then the nitty gritty of like insurance reimbursement and like what you can and can't do, then it gets all sorts of complicated. Um, I am currently at community college finishing my prereqs, and then I'll transfer to nursing school. But after I get my BSN, I'm looking to FNP. I'm scared. You can do it. I feel like you'll be okay. You can do it. Just eye on the prize. I have a ton of videos about like all sorts of topical things, and Amanda has like everything you'll ever need to get a job. You'll be okay. Go follow Jenna. Liz from Real World MP is also a gem. You'll be fine. All right. Do you want to answer like a couple more, and then
Sure.
You can, if you want to talk about your thingy that's going to save us all from ourselves, we can do that. What is your best advice for studying for FNP boards? Start early and just know you're never going to feel done. You know what I mean? So kind of set attainable goals. I just kind of looked at everything I had to know, all the info. So I did the LEAK study book, and then I did a board prep like class. And so I just took all the modules I still had to do, laid them out by the day. And when I was done that day, I was done. And then I gave myself a couple study days at the end to review stuff I didn't know. And I think just knowing you will never feel like you know it all, but you just have to kind of do it. You know what I mean? Like you're never going to be like, oh, I'm ready to take this test. No, you're just going to kind of have to know, like, it's a whole different beast, I feel like, than the NCLEX, because there's just so much. So you just kind of got to know, like, I did the best I can. And, you know, a lot of people have to take it a couple times, and you'll be okay. If that totally stinks if you have to take it again, but you're not like a failure or anything like that. But you're going to pass it on your first time. So you're going to be totally fine. Just plan ahead. Which I felt like was hard. What do you think, Amanda?
Yeah, I agree. This was a long time ago, so sometimes I like to repress the memory. No, just kidding. Definitely take a course. take a course and get a book. There are tons of great ones. I have some saved in my highlights. I'm sure that Liz has a video on this too. I would be surprised if you didn't. And then my top tip is when you're actually taking the test, to sit on your hands, read the question twice before you read the answers, and then take your hands out. Because especially if you're someone who's like click happy with the mouse. So that's what I was like, because I'm always like, oh, I'm just going to click the very first thing. I want to get through it. But I made myself twice. I tried to think of the answer in my head, and then I read the answers, and then I allowed myself hand on the mouse.
Yeah. Oh, that's a really good idea. Actually, I really like that, because I'm like a panic clicker. I'm like,
yes.
I don't know. All right, Maddie, I just saw, should NPs be worried about oversaturation and pay decrease? Amanda actually has like a whole, you have a whole thing on that.
Yeah. I have a whole training, a video training. It's free. You can go to my website, theresumérx.com/NP class, all one word, or head to the link in my bio, and it's in there, or you can message me. I'll send it to you. It's like a 35-minute video training. I'm not in the camp that believes that there's oversaturation. I think it's more about how you are approaching your job search. So that video goes into a different way to approach your job search strategy so that you don't feel that oversaturation.
Mm-hmm. A lot of jobs aren't online. Like, a lot of them.
That's the punchline.
Yeah. Sorry, I ruined that for you. She goes into a lot more detail. I have all of her links on my, if you go to my bio too, I have like the very first one is the link to the free masterclass. And then I have like all of them also listed, because I'm kind of just the resource person. I'm just gonna, everyone else has already done all the beautiful things, and here we go. I'll just link all of them. Can I move to Massachusetts? It's very expensive there. I kind of got used to like, pretty though. My cousin actually lives in Massachusetts. I'd be closer to Amanda.
It's true.
We could have a me, you, and Liz catch up. Have you ever actually met Liz in person?
I know, we could have No, but we talk every day. And that's the
Yeah.
funny thing about like internet friends. Like, I know your
Uh-huh.
deepest, darkest secrets, but I've never seen your
Uh-huh.
legs. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just such a
Well,
weird, it's like that's such a
I
weird
chat
thing.
I chat with like I chat with a lot of people on here regularly, but someone I talk with all the time, she was getting her COVID shot when I got mine, and she was like, Liz, and then we just sat down and like talked like we had been friends for a really long time because like we both talk back and forth, but we've never met, and it was just the strangest, like most
How
comfortable
funny.
thing ever. But I was like, so like, how's your blah? She's like, oh yeah, this, and I was like, I know so much about your life, and you know so much about mine, like, but we have never met.
Yes, it is.
Like, this is
It is very,
bizarre,
it is very strange. It is very strange.
very bizarre. Jenna said starting salary for FNP in Massachusetts is higher than 80. Just FYI for that question. That's good because your cost of living is also
That's
like,
good to know.
I was gonna say 80 seemed really low. Like really, like even in North Carolina, you made a little bit more than 80 if you worked full time. And North Carolina isn't about, we get paid like not, it's on the bottom curve. All right. Let me see. All right. Well, we will probably get going so that I know I need a little bit of time before bed. I don't know if you need some time before
Yeah.
bed. And everyone
Yeah,
else can have time before
I'm
bed.
reading a good book and I'm almost done. So, and we have to practice what I preach, right? Like
Yeah.
avoiding burnout and really
Yep.
like living your best life and all this stuff that's
Yep.
kind of fluffy. Like in action, that looks like getting 7 hours of sleep and
Yep.
drinking enough
Yep.
water and reading for pleasure. Like those are
Uh-huh.
the things that in my life are burnout repellent,
Yeah.
stress repellent. So yeah, and so we'll be talking more about this. I have a free live masterclass coming up this Sunday, the 25th at 8 Eastern. Liz will have the link. It's called How to Love Your NP Career Without Burning Out. So this will be like a whole 60-minute masterclass on Zoom. I'll be teaching some content. I'll be going over a framework. There'll be an interactive exercise, and there'll maybe be an invitation to come hang out with me and Liz inside of the new NP Society, which I'll tease. You have to watch the masterclass to find out what that is. It's a cool club, and we'd
It's
love you to
amazing.
join us. So,
The best.
yes.
Yeah. It's the best. All right. Well, thanks for hanging out, everyone. I'm gonna go paint my nails. That's my moment of zen.
That sounds lovely. Great
Because
idea.
my gardening has destroyed them. It seemed like a great idea. And then I was like, oh, I'm not meant for this. I forgot. I do that now. All right. Well, thanks for coming on and hanging out with us, Amanda.
Of
And
course. My
see.
pleasure.
All right. I will see you later. Go enjoy your book.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. I never know how to end these things. Thanks for coming, everyone. Have a good night, evening, everything. Let me see.